So I'm Teng. I'm a researcher at Delphi Digital. I spend most of my time focused in the NFT and metaverse. I would say that NFTs are basically a very emerging new technology. And as with any new emerging technologies, we typically go through a cycle, right? And basically, I think for NFTs, we've really sped our way through the Gartner's hype cycle, where in the earlier part of this year, we experienced major hype phase, right? And this really corresponds to the peak of inflated expectations in this cycle. And then after that, mostly it's been down, and basically trading volumes on most of the NFT marketplaces are really at the lowest for this year. So I think it's really safe to say that NFTs as a whole sector and industry, we are very much in this trial of disillusionment. And we're seeing today like people questioning like if NFTs are really still going to be a thing in the coming years. We've had like influencers like Kobe who are calling NFTs like just altcoin with pictures, which basically implying that the main use cases for NFTs is really for speculation. And so I think everybody is trying to figure out where the whole industry goes from here. Many of the NFTs in the last 12 months or so, very large part of their value. And we see, let's say we talk about things like Bored Apes, which basically hit up to like $500,000 per NFT. Many of them are trading based on speculation, right? It's really a belief that these NFTs and these projects will be very valuable in the future, either because they build something interesting out of it, or that people really want to own some of these things. Having seen like the floor prices for many of these NFTs drop steadily through the year, I think it's pretty safe to say that a lot of it was really speculation, right? That really drove the market beyond. What I've seen is that even though prices are pretty much down for the year, there is a lot of development and innovation that's really happening in the space. We're seeing people try to find very interesting use cases for this. We're seeing many big brands actually start to integrate NFTs into their product lines. They're trying to find business cases for the use of NFTs to drive greater levels of customer engagement, trying to build communities around some of the cool stuff they're trying to do. So I think over the course of the next year or two, we're going to start to see a lot of real utility, real use cases actually start to be built out. And that's what makes me very excited. The project that probably I would say was the most interesting or the craziest thing like in the NFT space this year was really what happened with the other side mint for the Bored Ape Yacht Club, or basically this was the Bored Ape land, as some people like to call it. And when it dropped in May this year, basically it clogged up the entire Ethereum network for a couple of hours. Gas prices hit over 10,000 Gwei. There were people paying like 2 ETH in gas just to be able to mint these lands. But I think what the other side was trying to do was something that was pretty ambitious. I think it was a very, very large mint. It was like over 100,000 in supply. And basically they're trying to build this open source kind of metaverse that allows people to sort of like co-create with them. But I think it's going to be some time before this becomes an actual sort of like playable game. Particularly surprising to me was really around what was going on in the Solana NFT ecosystem. Basically, Solana NFTs started taking on a life of their own from the earlier part of this year, and very quickly really expanded to become the second largest NFT ecosystem. I think DeGods within the Solana NFT system, it was basically the top PFP project, and at one point it was worth over 600 SOL. Unfortunately, I think Solana has faced very much a very big crisis in the last couple of weeks with the collapse of FTX and Alameda. And basically, because NFT prices are denominated in SOL, like many of these NFT collections have also fallen very significantly from a price perspective. I know many founders are thinking about moving their projects off the Solana chain just because there's such a big overhang over the whole chain itself. Just seeing how fast an NFT ecosystem could take off and how fast it could also come back down to earth was particularly interesting. There are two very big trends, which I think I'm definitely keeping a very big eye on. I think the first is really around NFT finance. There's going to be a greater degree of financialization of NFTs. I think it brings new utility for NFTs and brings in new participants in the space, like market makers, lenders, and so on, which are really necessary for NFTs to become a new asset class. I think this year, in 2022, we've seen some of the early NFT finance products take off. I think we've seen quite a good growth in loans using NFTs as collateral. We've seen it hit like more than 10x from its volume earlier this year. Almost, I think, 500 million worth of NFT loans have been taken out so far. And I think even more interestingly is that there are just so many startups I've encountered that are actually building products that will be launched in the coming weeks to months. I mean, some of these things are things that we haven't seen before. For example, derivatives around NFTs, NFT perps, NFT options that allow people to both participate in the upside of some of these NFT projects without having to fork out the money to be able to buy a full NFT. On the other side, it also allows people to sort of like hedge their exposure to NFTs, and this is going to bring in larger and more sophisticated players into the space. I think things like NFT pricing is also something that is very important. I think right now, pricing on NFTs has been very opaque, unreliable, typically reliant on marketplaces to show these pricings. But once we have a more robust sort of like pricing feed that's difficult to manipulate, but still provides very granular data like prices for NFTs that are rarer than the floor NFTs, I think is going to allow a lot more interesting things to be done in this space. And I personally believe that at some point in time, we're going to see an NFT-fi kind of summer, similar to what we had with DeFi summer in 2020 when these products actually start to launch. And I think the other trend I've actually been thinking a lot about in these recent days is really about NFT marketplaces, right? I think NFT marketplaces are very powerful businesses because they generate huge amount of cash flows. They're really not dependent on the success of any individual NFT project. And so everybody really wants a piece of this business. And we've seen like earlier this year, OpenSea was pretty much the dominant marketplace with over 90% of all the trading volumes. But over the course of the year, many serious competitors have really come up to challenge OpenSea in a very serious way, like X2Y2, Blur, Magic Eden. I imagine what we're going to see is basically what I call a great unbundling of the NFT marketplaces, where we're going to see a lot of newer competitor marketplaces that are very focused on a very specific vertical, such as PFPs, it could be virtual lands, it could be art, music, fashion, that will really start to chip away at the market share of these larger generalized marketplaces. And the reason is because they enable better user experiences, they enable like sort of like new business models to be built that are very tailored to some of these very specific verticals. And while I think right now they are still very tiny in terms of the volumes that they are seeing, I'm pretty convinced that over time they are going to start to grow in a much larger way. I think one of the most interesting things in the last couple of weeks was really Nike and their .swoosh announcement. What Nike did was basically they launched their .swoosh website, which is basically going to be a marketplace for virtual collectibles that will be co-created between Nike and their community. And I think that's a very big step by a very major brand to say that, okay, I do believe in what we are trying to do over here. Many other brands are also watching, seeing what are the lessons they can actually learn from these things, and they will be formulating their own strategies to get into NFTs, get into the metaverse, and get into Web3. Because Web3 is really going to be the next big battleground for many of these brands. If you look at social media channels, we look at marketing channels, most of these are really saturated, right? And it's really difficult to get attention in this very noisy space. But Web3 really presents a green field that's very much ripe for growth. And the brands are really able to tap into these trends in a very intentional way, I think they have the potential, they have the greatest potential to really succeed and drive their businesses forward. I think I'm definitely more on the bullish camp. Very much probably biased as well because I just spend so much of my time looking at the NFT space. But I do see some like very strong tailwinds that are going to accelerate the mainstream usage and adoption of NFTs in 2023. Firstly, we're going to see these like very big like social media platforms like Instagram really start to launch their NFT initiatives. And what I think is really cool is that we know that these like Web2 companies, Web2 tech companies are very good at making good products, right? They have a very strong focus on user experience. They have been able to make products that are very sticky, and that's really what they spend a lot of their time on, trying to get people to stay on the products they actually create. And I'll be excited to see when they actually launch their NFT initiatives, are they able to bring a lot of their expertise in making good user experience kind of products and really extract away a lot of the friction that people may encounter in interacting and using these NFTs. I'm really optimistic that these things are going to bring new people into the space in the coming year, and hopefully they will stick around once they see the potential value of this whole thing. I think there's one way that things can succeed where we work with a lot of these existing platforms that are outside of Web3 today, but bring them into the Web3 space. At the same time, I think there's another trend which I think is very powerful, where we're going to see a lot of new Web3 native brands start to be built out. And I think some of these in time to come will be worth like hundreds of billions of dollars. And these are not brands that are existing today, but these are brands that are built very much in the ground up manner, by really starting to form communities around them, co-creating interesting things with the community, and then starting to build their own platform before eventually getting their own voices heard in the much larger part of the world, right? So I think these two trends will continue to happen at their own pace, but eventually converge, and that will be where the inflection point will be, where NFTs really take off in a very, very meaningful way. I was thinking about this for a while, what the end state could be. I think it's a very interesting thought experiment. But I think one thing that is probably clear to me is that as we head towards that time, we probably wouldn't even need to think about NFTs, right? Basically, NFTs are just going to be such an integral part of so many things that we own, so many things that we do, that it doesn't even have to come across in our minds, right? As we do these things. For example, if I'm playing a game, let's say I pick up a rare sword after completing a dungeon raid, I know it's an NFT and it's just in my inventory, but at the back of mind, it's just there, and it becomes just a very natural part of all the different industries. I've asked people to not to look at prices of NFTs. I think that makes NFTs feel hyper financialized, and people sometimes place too much attention on the prices of NFTs, but rather really look at all the development that's really happening in this space. I'm always a very big believer in human ingenuity, and because NFTs have just such a huge design space, right? I think the potential for usage of NFTs is really only limited by your creativity, really limited by your imagination. I am 100% confident that we will find very interesting use cases for NFTs that go a lot beyond these instruments for speculation that we've seen in the past year. I think what you've seen is really version 0.1 of NFTs, but with enough time, you're going to see a much more interesting spectrum of NFTs. And I definitely encourage everyone to stay in touch with the space, because it's just, I think this is probably one of the fastest evolving and growing verticals in the whole tech industry right now.